People shares their glitch in the Matrix stories. Redditor 61, mine's not too out there, but it made an already great day even funnier. I was biking around a neighboring town, Alora, with some friends and we were going to go to the local gorge for a swim. We picked up a case of 12 cream sodas and tried to bike with them on one of our handlebars. Of course, this was a terrible idea, and as we got to the crosswalk, it falls over and breaks open and the cans go everywhere. We managed to, coincidentally, save 9 and there were 3 of us, so 3 each, not bad. JPG. Anyways, as we're biking, I, being paranoid about dropping things again as I am, see the ones I'm holding. Only 2? I ask my friends to see theirs, they each have 3. I am a little miffed, but 1 less cream soda for me wasn't a big deal. So I check my pockets, everything, and no cream soda. I figure it must have fallen out. Now, as we parked our bikes in the nearby forest trail, I hop off my bike, and as I do I kick a cream soda can that was sitting near my foot. I didn't hear one fall and it wasn't rolling down the slope of the trail, it was just sitting there. I asked if either of my friends had dropped one of theirs, because I had both of mine still. They said nope. The mysterious cream soda can that had vanished returned to me at my feet when we stopped biking. I thought about this for a second, and wondered if I had put one in my water bottle holder underneath my bike. Seems logical, except that there was already a water bottle in its place. We decided it was a wormhole, but a glitch in the Matrix is just as likely. TLDR, magic missing cream soda can mysteriously returns to me via thin air. Redditor 62, at a friend's place back in 2008. When we were all teenagers, we had a cool shed at a friend's that we'd hang out in every weekend. It had 4 sets of bunk beds, tables, a fireplace, TV, fridge, etc., the whole lot. One night we were all hanging out in there when I decided I needed a piss. I walked out the front door of the shed and started to walk to the right when I stopped. Now let me explain the layout here. As you walk out of the shed, his house is to the left and to the right is where we all parked our cars. Further out you're left with empty fields and trees. It was dark by now, the lights from the house illuminating the space between the house and our cars, but trailing off just past them. As I took a step to the right intending to go behind the cars to relieve myself, I saw my friend's older brother standing there. I watched him for a good 5-10 seconds as he stood there, facing into the darkness. He then proceeded to walk behind a couple trees and a car before he disappeared. Confused, I walked back into the shed and asked my friend what his brother was doing by the cars. The conversation went as follows. Me: hey man, what's your brother doing by the cars? Him: what do you mean? Me: he just walked off behind the cars. Brother: I'm right here. I looked over and there his brother was, sitting down on one of the chairs with a drink. He was wearing the exact same clothes as I saw him in, and the only way to get into the shed was through the door that I was standing in the way of. To this day, I've no idea how it all happened. I'm guessing I was just seeing things, but the fact that I watched him walk around for a good 10 seconds has always puzzled me. I've never had anything else like that happen. Redditor 63, I've never been one to sleepwalk, but morning about 10 years ago I woke up and realized all of the light bulbs in my room had been removed and placed on my nightstand beside my bed. Later that day I discovered that my cousin had died during the night from a freak car accident. To this day, every time a family member dies, I wake up with the light bulbs next to my bed. The first time it happened I was still living with my parents, so I assumed that someone else had done it, but after questioning them I realized they hadn't. Since then I've lived on my own and it's happened. Now I'm married and it's happened, and the ceiling in our room is vaulted and requires a ladder to change the light bulbs. It would definitely have woken up my husband had I brought the ladder in the room in the middle of the night. Redditor 64, when I was around 8 years old or so, I was swinging on the swing set in my backyard. As usual, I was attempting to jump off as far as I could go. Most days, I could go maybe 2 meters tops. That day was special. That day I jumped off and, as best as I can describe it, I glided across the ground about a foot above it. I distinctly remember gliding about 6 meters before thinking, okay, that's far enough, getting pretty close to hitting the garage now. At that point, I started to descend and landed at a perfect running speed. To this day I have tried to replicate the event at every opportunity and have failed every time. Redditor 65, I had a friend in high school, let's call him Bob. Bob was a very nice fellow, and while we weren't that close, we had similar tastes in music and we'd share CDs. This is in the late 80s, way before file sharing. Anyway, we eventually graduated, and I moved several hundred miles away to college, and we lost touch. When I left for college, I had one of Bob's CDs still in my possession, Beat, by King Crimson. Fast forward 10 years. I'd graduated college and was knee-deep in my career, and finally saved up enough money and bought my first house. In the new house, and while unpacking, I see the CD in a box, hadn't noticed it in many years, and thought, gee, I really should track down Bob and return this. Right then, the doorbell rings. It's Bob, and he says, hey, you wouldn't happen to still have my King Crimson CD, would you? I look down. I'm holding it in my hand. I hand it to him, and his mouth drops open, mine probably already is. We exchange pleasantries. I probably asked him how he found me, but I no longer remember. He eventually takes off. I haven't seen Bob since. Redditor 66, I'm late to the party, but this has freaked me out forever. I was a satellite installer and I was driving between two small towns in North Carolina, Statesville, and Taylorsville. It's about a 20-minute drive of a perfectly straight 2-lane road with pretty much nothing but trees on either side. It's the middle of the day and I'm driving along listening to Howard Stern on Sirius when all of a sudden I go from wide awake to falling asleep. Meaning, 1 second I'm normal, and a second later my head is drooping down and eyes closing, and what snaps me out of it is my car bounces like I just hit a speed bump, but I'm still in the middle of the road. Howard Stern is still in the same sentence, but my GPS signal says it is lost. And then I hear recalculating, and when it comes back I realize I am about 12 miles further down the road than I was, and I had missed my turn by 5 miles. My immediate thought, even though I consider myself a level-headed atheist, was that I fell asleep, hit a tree and died, and was now in some weird afterlife. It was such a strong feeling that I drove to the nearest gas station, got out, headed inside with a sweaty palms, feeling that the cashier inside was not going to be able to see me. To my relief she did, and I bought a Red Bull. I still think I was hypnotized by the road and drove on some weird autopilot for a while, but losing GPS signal, and not missing any of Howard Stern is explainable to me. I even used the Sirius ability to rewind and there was none of the show that I missed. In case you're wondering, my beat hole felt fine. Redditor 67, had an awesome dream that made my day. 10 minutes after waking up I get a call from my ex from 4 years ago. She asks me if I had a dream last night. I say of course. She then starts asking me details of it. The details were exactly my dream. I laugh and call bullshit on her, then ask, oh yeah, if you saw my dream, what was the color of my suit? She immediately says red. I drop the phone. She saw my fucking dream. Redditor 68, my mom and I both dream about the same place. It's a 3-story white house. We usually dream about the house on the same night, so that in the morning we have conversations like, so, the house was in the Midwest last night? Yeah, I know. Was the laundry out on the line yet? No, the cloth's pins were rotten. The first time we found out that we had been dreaming about the same house was the day my ma came out and said I just had the most terrifying dream ever. I was in a big, square, 3-story house in the woods and I was just investigating it. I think I was going to buy it. I went up to the 3rd story and got lost and then ran into this idiot man-child. Mom, was he wearing a blue work shirt and suspenders? Did he sleep on the mattress in the back room? Yes. Was the 3rd story kitchen floor rotting through? Yes. The conversation went on for hours as we went into minute detail. Everything, and I mean everything, matched up. We ended the conversation by each drawing a picture of the house. Identical. So yeah. There's that. Redditor 69, short story. When I was a baby my mother had a creepy dream about a little girl who wanted to play with me forever. Next day, the roof caves in over my crib. Luckily my mom was feeding me downstairs. I think we got a nice insurance settlement from that one. Redditor 70, back when my husband and I first got together, we used to work opposite shifts. One day I was napping in our apartment before I went to work. As I was drifting off, I had this strange feeling like he was right there, laying with me. It was really comforting and warm, so I drifting right into a dream where we were napping together outside in the sun. I woke up about 30 minutes later, feeling totally refreshed. My phone vibrated with a text message from my husband. It said, "Just took a nap on my break. Thanks for joining me." Cool, huh? I decided to marry him in an effort to absorb his powers. Redditor 71, you can't explain that. Redditor 72, woke up one morning when I was 16 or so, and realized that I had forgotten how to tie my shoes. Like, this action I had done every day almost since I would walk, was wiped from my mind. I had to learn all over again. Redditor 73, this guy in a suit stopped me from getting hit by a car, made me sign some tablet, then told me my son was going to be a very important person. I told him I didn't even have a son and he just smiled and walked away. Redditor 74, I remember in 6th grade I wrote an entire page of some assignment we had to do in my notebook. Turned the page for some reason and when I turned back the writing disappeared, but the impressions from the pencil noticeable. Redditor 75, why am I always so late to these threads? Sigh, hope this gets read. I was a sophomore in HS at my GF's house watching a movie. It was around 10 p.m. when the flick ended. I proceed to skateboard home. I only lived like 2 blocks away and it was a pretty quiet suburban neighborhood. I'm skating down the hill towards a larger street, larger but never really busy, especially not at night. When I reach the intersection I nail a rock. I had planned on blasting across the street since there were no cars coming either direction. I fly off the board, skid a good 3 or 4 feet on my head, right shoulder, hip and knee. I rolled to my back and screamed out in agony. The pain was so bad I couldn't really move. I look up the road and about 30 yards off is a car coming down the way. And where I landed, I was right in its path. 2-lane street. I was right in the middle of his lane. My head was aligned with the wheel. I tried like heck to move. I screamed. I yelled. I couldn't do anything. Car was about 15 yards off. He doesn't see me. Makes no attempt to swerve. 10 yards. I hear him barreling down. I close my eyes. Brace. Nothing. Open eyes. Look where the car had been. Nothing. Hear the car behind me. Look where it was supposed to be in the other direction. Tail lights cruising up the road. I hadn't moved. He didn't swerve. It was like he passed through me. Or I passed through him. There isn't really any way he could have passed over me, not with the way I had landed and was positioned in the street. It was a little car. I can't explain it. I got up, terrified, bloody and baffled. Hobbled home and went to sleep. No one believed me. But it's fucking true. TL, doctor, fell off my skateboard onto a street with a car headed down it. Car passed right through me. Redditor 76, one of my first posts and it's totally going to get buried but I don't care. No one else has appreciated this story. I used to work at Speedway for over a year and such. I started smoking there. Had a nervous breakdown there. Oh, by the way, it was a teeny speedway right next to the ghetto. Anyway, one evening I was working by myself again, because it was so tiny and I even closed by myself and one of my usual customers had come in to ask for a pack of Marlboro Reds 100s, the tall pack soft pack. Now, having worked for a while, my way of grabbing the cigarette packs from their little homes and tossing them onto the counter had become quite sophisticated. This particular pack, I grabbed between my index and middle finger and swung my arm downward toward my side, still holding it like that. But as my arm came down and finished its curve, the pack left my fingers and vanished. There was no sound of the pack hitting the floor nor the wall. It did not fly backwards into the open security door that was behind me. The pack left my fingers and left this realm of reality. The customer stood there just as dumbfounded as I was. And the two of us stood in total silence before I slowly grabbed a second pack and re-attempted said stunt, just to hear what it would have sounded like. It made an odd top noise, you know. The kind of sound you would expect a pack of cigs to make if it hits something. So I sold him the pack, still a bit freaked out, and then proceeded to check the entire store for that lost pack. I even went across the store and checked behind racks and so forth. You know, A distance that would be impossible for the pack to travel. Nothing, though, it was cool. I guess. Still kind of freaky. I have other similar stories about things like this, such as water cups that have vanished on me. Chocolate. Toys. Childhood toys, that is. Now that I think about it. This sort of thing happens to me a lot. Maybe I'm a wormhole. Sweet. Redditor 77. I was walking with my friend at school to his next class as I had a break. He was wearing a hockey jersey, a black toque and jeans. When we got to his class he said bye and walked inside the room. Simultaneously some guy walked out of another room further down the semi-deserted hallway wearing the same jersey, black toque and jeans. Now that I think about it, I never did see the other guy's face. TLDR, I have a teleporting friend. Redditor 78. Just before coincidentally glitch in the Matrix? I knocked over my can of CCK. It flipped over and landed on the floor perfectly, and not a single drop was spilled. Redditor 79. During the presidential campaign of 2008, I was watching a town hall type even with Obama. Basically, he finished giving a speech and was taking questions from the audience. An old guy gets the microphone, but something interrupts him. Maybe the audience was still applauding Obama's last answer or something. Anyway, the man hesitates slightly and Obama says, "Yeah, go ahead Jim," or some name. The man proceeds to ask the question. That's when I realized that the whole election process is a complete sham. What's made to look like random people asking the candidate questions is actually a completely staged pageant where the people asking questions are planted in the audience with softball questions meant to set the candidate up to get a hurrah response while not really saying anything substantial. When I tell people this story they always say, well yeah, of course the people are pre-screened, otherwise some wackos would say crazy shit. But I call bullshit, especially when it's acted out to be random people. Redditor 80. One time I was walking around downtown San Jose before meeting some friends for a movie. This was a region near where I had been working for at least 6 months, so I knew it well. When I first started walking I saw a hip couple dressed in dark clothes. I realized I was going the wrong way and walked back to my starting point along a street I had never been on, despite all my time spent in the area. When I got back to my starting point I found another hip couple dressed in dark clothes walking by in exactly the same space the other two had been. I had the strong impression they were the same people even though I knew they weren't. I continued to the movie theater and as I was crossing a street the traffic stranded on a concrete island in the middle of a road. A mass transit train turned onto the road and due to being on the island there was no way to distance myself as it passed me, a mere foot away at speed. The sensation of the train bearing down on me and not slowing as it would at a stop caused me to think of it as a living animal. This expanded to the idea that the entire city was alive and hated me. When I had a stoplight I walked onto the movie theater and had the sensation that I could perceive the gears and pulleys behind perspective. This is difficult to explain. I became very conscious of my head bob and how the visual perspective of my surroundings was subtly altered with the beat of each step. I felt very strongly that if I moved my head the wrong way or too fast I would see that all reality was a massive construction of plywood cutouts, many layers deep, being moved mechanically to create the appearance of the world from my unique vantage point. This unnerved me deeply and as much as I dared I closed my eyes while walking down the sidewalk, taking quick peeks to avoid walking into people or the street. Got to the theater, met my friends, watched the documentary Rivers and Tides. It was good. Important note, have never done any hallucinogens, before or after this experience. Redditor 81. So this one is all about my brother. First of all, my parents named him Samuel. As in the prophet, the guy who hears God calling his name. There's a story behind this too, but anyways, on 2 separate occasions he has had really strange foresight. The first was when my mom's brother died. Nobody in the family knew, but when my brother woke up that morning he said to my mom, "Somebody's going to die today." My little bro is a really quiet kid and doesn't really say weird shit. My mom was thoroughly freaked out, and thought she had a crazy son. Later on, we find out that her brother died. The second was on 9/11/01. Little bro was 4 at the time and he also woke up that day and he said to my mom, "People are going to die today." Mom was really freaked and started praying for my brother, thinking he was crazy beans. And then 9/11 happens. These may not be that significant, but we all think my bro's a little psychic. Redditor 82, okay, such an interesting thread. I had to register to tell this thing that happened to me. It happened 2 days after I turned 8. I live in Finland and we had just moved into town. Our apartment was in these cheap rental high-rises, 8th floor. My grandma had given me a few comic books as a present and I had been reading them ever since the party, quite a stack, something like 10 to 15 individual comics. There was this one book, a Spider-Man comic. It wasn't about the usual Spidey but something about Peter Parker's clone acting as Crimson Spider-Man, at least that's how it was translated to Finnish. I had just returned from school so my parents were still at work and I started reading this comic. At some page the protagonist is crouching on a roof, jumps down and lands into the Spidey crouch, hands between his legs. Without thinking anything I just laid down the comic, walked to our balcony and climbed on the fence using a chair as a ladder. As I was sitting there I see some man down and across the street. He saw me sitting there and started running towards our house. At this same moment, I had this really calm feeling taking over me. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes and jumped down. When I jumped I could hear the man scream a Jamal out !1 no, followed by an abbreviation to God help me. Then I just heard wind in my ears. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground, crouching like Spider-Man. The man runs around some high bushes just when I stand up, stops dead on his tracks and all color escapes his face. He just stood there with absolute terror in his eyes, completely silent and looking at me for a few seconds before backing away slowly, without turning his face off me before he's back at the corner, where he turns away. I returned to the lower door only to find out I had left my key inside. So I just sat down and waited for my father to return from work, something like 1 hour. He was naturally surprised to find me there, without my backpack. I told him what had happened. Dad, I'm Spider-Man, when we were in the elevator. Dad thought it was just my imagination. When we returned inside and he saw my comic book laid open on the ground, with the page featuring the jump and the balcony door left open, he took away the particular comic book and never allowed me on the balcony before I turned 12 and we moved to a bit better house, 3rd floor. He also becomes disoriented every time I mention this to him and changes the subject quickly. Although he does admit he found me downstairs and balcony door was open. I still remember this occasionally, clear as day. TLDR, I was the glitch in the Matrix. Redditor 83, I think the strangest glitch I found was back when I was in high school. I was talking to a friend on the phone, describing a dream I had about an ice skating rink, and then he starts to describe the rest of the dream to me from the opposite point of view. It was a while ago so I don't remember everything, but we both described the scenery, what the people were doing, etc. It freaked me out when it happened. Redditor 84, was with my siblings on vacation, ambling around a French town, got distracted by something, and when I rejoined them they told me about a guy who looked exactly like me, walked like me and everything, who I just missed. Having a theory about doppelgangers, that they never seem to meet each other, I asked where he went. They pointed to the shop he'd just gone into. Excited, I went in. But only the shopkeeper was there, and the shop was tiny. Redditor 85, at a party in college, I was walking out the back door to smoke a cig when another guy opens the door to come in. We look at each for a split second and I yell Tim. And he yells. And we hug and spend a few minutes catching up, as we hadn't seen each other in years. After 5 minutes we stop talking, look at each other hard and I say, we've never met, have we? And he responds, I have no idea who you are. But we both knew each other's names. Redditor 86, I had purchased the Ultimate Doom from id Software. It came on CD delivered to me, I installed it on my PC and had great fun. Later that year I went on vacation, and I lent the disc to my friend. He installed it, and played it while I was on vacation. When we got back I found the disc on top of my microwave. I then called my friend who said he had just reinstalled the game yesterday and remembers putting the disc back into his CD wallet. The CD was no longer there but the game manual still was. Redditor 87, this type of thing happens to me all the time. It used to feel like I was borderline precognizant, way back in elementary school. Things tended to happen in such a way that what I did felt more right than it really should have. I would have dreams of the most inconsequential things. A kid in a blue shirt swings on a tire, while the recess guards passed by, talking about how a soccer tournament coming up next week, and then I would sit down on a bench, and just wait, for no apparent reason then, like a week later, the dream would happen in real life, to a T. When I'm in RL, and it happens, it feels like I'm looking through my eyes, but my body is taking cues from, I don't know, the universe? But I'm not actually doing it consciously. I remember the most dramatic of these was a dream I had when I was about 4-ish years old, that came true 12 years later, when I walked into the white room with the textured walls, trimmed in green, surrounded by people with instruments, and then the large man with an unkempt beard walked in wearing a brown shirt and pants, while the sunlight touches his podium. I just about flipped my wig, in band class, in junior year, because my prediction from over a decade ago came back full force and punched me square in the mind hole. Redditor 88, I was using my desktop computer. The internet was working perfectly fine, and after about 30 minutes it ducks up on me. I lost connection. I tried resetting the router and restarting my computer a couple times and it did not work. I looked at my router again and noticed that there were only 2 Ethernet cables. One was going to my Xbox and the other was going to the modem. There wasn't a cable going to the desktop. I looked behind the desktop and the cable was connected to it, but the other end was nowhere near the router. Someone had to have moved it in order for it to be where it was. My router is on the floor, it's not on top of the desk. So the way I see it, I was receiving a phantom internet signal for 20 minutes before it died. My desktop has no Wi-Fi capabilities. Redditor 89, all the different dreams posted here made me think of a similar occurrence. Shortly after moving to a different town for college, a good friend from home died. I went back home for the funeral, touched his hand in the coffin and said goodbye. That night, I was in the process of having a dream and he appeared. He told me that he had something to show me. He asked me what I knew of astral projection, and explained that in the realm he's in now, he can take me out of my dream to the astral plane. We went all kinds of neat places, and he then told me that he's safe and happy, and that he had to wait to tell me because he couldn't find me in my new town. He stopped talking abruptly, grabbed my shoulder and said, 12:51, and I immediately woke up to my mom yelling at me. I looked at the clock, and it was 12:51. My mom said she never said the time, just to get up. Redditor 90, 2007, the ground shook and there was a boom sound. I looked out the window and saw an orange glow coming from behind the subdivision. Curious at what just happened, I went down the street and up a hill to see what it was, and there was nothing going on. No fire, no sirens, etc. The next day on the news they said a tanker truck rolled off the overpass and crashed on the road below it in a fiery explosion. Redditor 91, DMT. Redditor 92, I've been reading this thread for 5 hours. Redditor 93, probably too late to get seen, but once I was at a music festival, and said to a friend before going to bed, "Man, I really wish I had a bottle of Southern Comfort with me. Forgive me, I was young and didn't know any better." The next morning, I woke up to a half-empty bottle of SoCo rolling down the hill towards my sleeping bag where I was sleeping outside. Redditor 94, I have 2 stories that are just weird as fuck. Both of them are things I just would not believe if someone else told them to me, but I can swear with every fiber of my being that they happened as I write them here. The first happened a couple years ago. I can't remember the occasion, but my mother and I had gone to AW for lunch, and we were both sitting there eating our meals. We happened to be seated pretty close to the washroom doors, so I noticed everyone going in and out. First person to come out is this old man who's kind of hobbling along. He walked past and I looked at him and went on with my meal. Not 30 seconds later, another man comes out of the bathroom, and at this point I get a little freaked out because I realize it's the exact same person. Same limp, clothing, face, everything. A couple minutes later, the same thing happens except it's an old woman this time. She comes out, then 30 seconds later comes right out of the bathroom again. My mom took a look at me and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I just kind of stammered a bit, then wrote it off as me being crazy. The next story is more weird, in my opinion, and is the single strangest occurrence of my life. This happened when I was about 9 years old, but I can still remember it vividly. We were visiting family in Nevada with my dad, and they lived out in a very dry area in a fairly good-sized trailer. A couple days in, I was playing outside with my cousin, pretty much just messing around in the dirt. At some point, I look up. Right next to the house is a field, I guess? Surrounded by wire fence, probably originally for livestock. But anyway, there's this guy standing there. This is a good 300 or more feet away, so I cannot see him clearly at all. Cue the weird. As soon as I look at this guy, I have what I can only describe as an out-of-body experience. My body pretty much just went into lockdown, and I was no longer seeing through my eyes. And I wasn't just floating there or anything. I was in that man's body. Through his eyes I could see two little shapes playing across the field, but I could just feel that he saw the shapes as animals. And then I realized he was holding a fucking shotgun. After that I regained my body and blurted out, "We have to go indoors," offering no explanation to my cousin, who thought I was nuts. I didn't tell anyone because I just didn't know how to express it to other people back then. I've only since told my brothers, but I don't think they believed me. Still freaks me out when I think about it today because it's the only time I've ever lost control of my body. It was almost like a dream, but the whole thing felt like it was happening in slow motion. TLDR, there have been a few times in my life when weird stuff has happened to me. I can't TLDR this stuff. Edit. Changed sentence structure a bit to make it nicer to read. Redditor 95. My dad used to get up around 3 a.m. every morning for work. Starting at a very early age, I would wake up on my own and wander downstairs to see him before he left. One morning when I was about 4 years old, I made it to the bottom of the stairs and noticed that the front door was ajar. I opened it up and saw my father in his favorite work shirt making his way down the driveway to his truck in his typical work outfit, plaid shirt and dickies. I swung the door open wide and yelled for him to come back for a hug before he left. He slowly turned around and just stared at me and started walking back towards the house. He was looking so strangely at me that it started to scare me, and I began crying and asking what was wrong. Just as he had almost reached me, a pair of arms encircled me from behind in a bear hug. I turned my head to see my understandably freaked out father staring at his doppelganger in the same outfit. The double took one look at my dad and ran down the driveway. Meanwhile, my dad yanked me in the house and locked the door. Weirdest morning ever. Never did quite figure that one out. I would not trust my 4-year-old memory of the event if it wasn't also witnessed by my father. He won't really talk about it these days, but my mom has since told me that he called out of work and she spent the day reassuring him he wasn't a nutcases. TLDR, Dad and I met his equally freaked out doppelganger at 3 a.m. in our own driveway. Redditor 96. The only thing I have is somehow I got a credit for chemistry in high school. I didn't take chemistry, but this credit allowed me to graduate early, and I have taken multiple classes where you need chemistry as a prereq. Redditor 97. At a friend's party when I was 13 or so, I went out to their driveway and looked up at the stars. Suddenly the brightest one just fell. Like it was glued to the sky and suddenly came undone. It fell straight down behind the houses on the other side of the street. It was surreal. Redditor 98. Knocked out a baby front tooth early in elementary school, adult tooth grew in. Knocked out same tooth a couple years later, another adult tooth grew in. Clearly there is a tooth fairy, and she likes me. She gave me money and another tooth. For free. Redditor 99. When I was much younger, I broke my thumb by falling out of bed seriously. The cast I got apparently made my skin constantly itch underneath. Allergy? Not sure. So one day in class with my pencil, as I was trying to scratch a little deeper, it got far enough that my fingers lost grip and couldn't grab it again. So I had a pencil stuck in my cast until I could get it off. Well, when it finally got cut off, there was no pencil stuck there. Doctor, I absorbed a pencil through my skin, or something. Redditor 100. Okay. In 2009, I performed a show on a boat at the Edinburgh Festival. It was a pretty stressful show. The cast were there for 10 days, performing 5 shows a day, back to back, shuffling back and forth between the boat and our flat with a change of clothes each day so that we could go out straight after THF last show. Anyway, one day we're walking from the boat to the flat and I see a pink sock on the pavement. I pick it up, it's pink with a white cupcake on it. It has to be mine. I have this exact same pair of socks with me in Edinburgh. I must have dropped it as it's so close to the boat. The rest of the cast is all grossed out that I'm touching this sock and considering taking it back to the flat, but I'm totally convinced it must be mine. Get back to the flat, and it wasn't. It kind of blew my mind that someone in a small vicinity had the same distinctive socks as me, and proceeded to lose one on my path home. Who loses a sock? So I kept the extra sock. Now I have 3. Redditor 101. A friend and I went to PF Chang's for lunch, and when we got there was a short wait. The hostess gives us a pager, and as we're waiting, I mentioned to my buddy that the image on the pager reminded me of the movie The Matrix. Fast forward a couple minutes and the hostess takes us to our table. The server comes over and introduces herself. Hi, my name is Trinity. And yes, that is her real name. Redditor 102. When I was in my sophomore year of high school, there was this cute blonde girl in my history class that quite a few of the guys were interested in. There was nothing super unique about her, she was just a fairly funny, cute, average girl. Anyway, this girl was an exchange student from Germany, and after several months of being in our class, she simply stopped coming. It was odd for a week or two, but after that I started to wonder what had happened to her. I asked one of my friends if maybe she had moved back, but he said he had no idea who I was talking about, and I soon came to learn that no one did. I still don't know if I had dreamed the whole episode, and maybe my subconscious is playing a trick on me, or if someone actually went missing from my history class who everyone spontaneously forgot. Redditor 103. I have never been able to explain this one, and it still haunts me to this day. Not sure if it exactly fits as a glitch of the Matrix, but perhaps a past life type of thing? I have only ever shared this with a few people in my life, so here you go internet. Anyway, when I was around 5 years old, my father, his girlfriend at the time, and myself visited a theme park. While we were walking around, I saw this girl my age and instantly recognized her. I didn't know her name, or where I knew her from. I just knew that I knew her and I had missed her. The look in her eyes when our eyes meet, instantly told me that she recognized me too. We both ran towards each other and embraced in a tight hug in that cliché reunited way, and started excitedly talking. I remember looking up at our parents and they were talking to each other and shrugging and laughing, like WTF? Our parents allowed us to walk around with each other for a while, and eventually ride the tram thing to another part of the park. I remember when we rode on the tram they let us sit in our own seat in front of them and we held hands. I remember eventually our parental units made us part ways and the immense desire I had to not let her go. We hugged some more, and went our separate ways, never to meet again that I know of. As I said, I have never forgotten this, or found an explanation for it. TLDR at the age of 5, meet someone from a past life. Redditor 104, am I the only one who always look at the clock at 9:11? I always look over in school or at home and see it's 9:11. Creepy as fuck. Redditor 105, one day, many years ago, I had a dream that I got out of bed and immediately ate a pear. Then, I woke up and ate a pear. Directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Redditor 106, I said to myself once, I can't be bothered catching the bus. I want someone to pick me up and drop me home. If this happens now, then I am definitely living in a simulation. Soon after, less than 1 minute had passed, a friend picked me up and was heading my way and dropped me on my doorstep. Redditor 107, I was working in a decades-old nursing home out in the middle of the woods in PA as a nurse aide on the night shift. Wife won't come visit me at work because she insists it looks like a Rob Zombie video. A resident pulls the mechanical call bell in the bathroom for assistance. I flip it off and help her back to bed. As I'm exiting the only way in or out, the call bell goes on again. I look back and it's not the electronic one in her bedroom, which blinks slowly. It's the mechanically operated one you have to physically pull in the bathroom, which blinks twice as fast. The lady is close to 400 pounds and non-ambulatory. There is no physical way she could have pulled that bell, I sure as heck did not, and there was no one else around. Redditor 108, in my parents' living room there is a picture of me hanging on the wall, dated 52 years before I was born. Edit, emailed mom, waiting for a reply of a pic. It's a painting, title was David by some Dutch. Google gives me nothing. Here is a pic of me and mom, when I was around 4. Here is the message I sent. Kinda late here, might have to wait until tomorrow. Sorry. Redditor 109, not so much a glitch in the matrix, but still interesting. This was while I was in Kuwait. I had been staying up late reading some physics book. I think it had something to do with Schrodinger's cat theory. Anyways, I got up to go to the bathroom, and as I was walking to the door in our tent, I know, it's strange, a door on a tent, but there's a door. I reached out for the handle and turned it, pushed and let it swing open a little. As I did that, the wind caught the door, and it was like I went through one of those little Matrix moments. I saw the door get caught by the wind, and in my head I thought about whether or not it was worth the effort to try and reach for the door to keep it from swinging all the way and slamming loudly against the side of our little tent building thing, which would have made a loud noise, waking people up. I realized that I'd prefer to not be lazy so as to avoid the embarrassment of appearing clumsy in front of other people. That's when I decided to calculate whether or not it was even possible to catch the handle from my position. Since the door was rapidly accelerating in an outward swinging direction from me, I calculated roughly in my head the speed at which it was departing from me, and the speed with which I could jump forward and grab the handle to stop it. I immediately realized that I would be able to stop the door from swinging open, and so I begrudgingly shifted my weight to my left foot, and used all my strength from my left leg to propel me outward towards the handle. I reached out for the handle as I arched out through the air, and caught it firmly in my right hand, stopping the swing dead in its tracks. The funny part was how surreal this was. It happened in the space of about a quarter second, but as I held the handle in my hand and shut the door, I was immediately awed with the realization of how many processes my mind had just ran through. I picked them apart in my head and burned it to my memory so that I would be able to actually say to myself later without doubt, yeah, that all happened right then. These kinds of things happen all the time. People just tend not to think about it too much. Hundreds of calculations in moments. It's just amazing what the mind can do and how fast it can work. Redditor 110. My university was bisected by a big lake with a wooden footbridge going across it, and it had a gazebo island in the middle. One night while walking up to the footbridge, I noticed a guy in a gray hoodie with the hood up walking across the section of the bridge closest to me, towards land, but didn't think anything of him, of course. At that moment, a big oak tree next to the sidewalk I was on cut off my view of the bridge for a split second. When I passed the tree and looked back toward the bridge, the guy in the hoodie was just gone. He couldn't have possibly walked by me off the bridge because I would have seen him, and he couldn't have possibly had time to turn around and make it all the way back to the center island, either. He was just plain gone into thin air. And this gets better. When my friend came back from abroad the next semester, something in conversation reminded me of what I saw, and I started bringing it up and said I saw something weird on the bridge. His eyes lit up and he asked, "Dude in a hoodie disappeared?" He said he saw something like that freshman year, but never mentioned it because he thought his eyes were just playing tricks on him. Redditor 111. Either I am dealing with some form of memory loss, or I am dealing with a guy from an alternate timeline. I started college this week and one of my classes is world religion. On my first day of class, a guy walks in about 15 minutes late and sits next to me. During break he looks at me, smiles wide, and says, "It's been a long time, how are you?" I have zero recollection of who he is. He doesn't look or sound familiar, and I tend to not forget people even if they only played a very small role in my life. I asked him who he was and how he knew me. He told me his full name, still not ringing any bells, and said he knew me from a private school called Homeland Village or something like that. He said that I was there to take a class on Photoshop. He also mentioned the names of some of the other students. And he wrapped up his story with how we were at a Halloween party together once. I have never attended private school, or have even heard the name of the one he mentioned too. Never taken a Photoshop class, and 3. Have never been to a Halloween party that had more than 6 good close friends. I was convinced that he had me confused for someone else. But here's the kicker, he knows me by a name that I no longer go by, and described me with a very out there hairstyle that I haven't had in years. What? The actual fuck? TLDR, a kid accidentally left his timeline, entered mine, and wants to be friends because he knew an alternate version of me. Redditor 112, 8 hours into a 7,000 comment post, this will never be seen. This story is triple weird because not only did I consider making a similar post this morning, the title was also similar and I indeed had an actual glitch this morning. 2 days ago I noticed my Arrested Development Season 1 DVD set was sitting on the table at the foot of my bed. I explicitly remember wondering to myself why I had gotten it out, and then remembered that I intended to show it to one of my buddies. I thought, oh yeah, Adam would love Arrested Development. I leave the DVD set there so I can show my buddy later. I wake up this morning, sit up in bed, look down towards my feet, and in the exact same position and orientation of the old Arrested Development set there is now my Firefly DVD set. I instantly WTF and stare for a few moments. As I investigate, I find the Arrested Development set knocked onto the floor. Bull. Shit. I live alone. I did not even touch the Arrested Development set, and in fact I intentionally left it alone. Mother ducking glitch. Edit, I'll be damned, people saw it. For slightly more detail, I forgot about it in the first place because the table I left it on is one of those areas where crap tends to just accumulate in the house, so it's sitting there among a bunch of other junk. Also, I originally intended to show it to my friend 3 weekends ago, so it had passed out of mind by then. In all honesty, do I think there was a glitch? No. It is frequently demonstrated how easily our mind can be fooled and how we can alter our own memories. So, from among the possible explanations so far and after further consideration, from most likely to least likely in my opinion. 1. I simply forgot moving the DVDs. Maybe I did it absent-mindedly while I was distracted. Maybe I didn't notice the Firefly set was under the Arrested Development set, because as they are two of my favorite shows it seems likely that I would grab them both if I had the intention of showing them to someone else. Also, the Firefly set is a similar color to the table, helping me not notice it. I could have just accidentally knocked the top set of DVDs to the floor or something. 2. I did it while sleepwalking. 3. Glitch in the Matrix. 4. Some kind of crazy quantum tunnel shit or something. Still Beale shit, though. Redditor 113, another glitch is when you learn a new word and suddenly it's everywhere and everybody is using it. Television, friends, etc. It's like the Matrix guy said, shit, there's a word missing there. Let's add it everywhere. Redditor 114, about 2 years ago I was watching my dogs go poop in the backyard. It was about 11 p.m. and black outside. There was a porch light on in the back by the door. There is a pool pump system on the side of the house and there is no light there. I'm setting the scene. So I'm in the backyard and I look over to the pool pump area. You know how there are shadows within shadows? Well, what I saw was a shadow, a mist, a fuzzy moving cloud in the shape of a man. He must have been 9 feet tall. His back was turned and he had a robe with a root on. He turns his head to reveal an even darker shade of pitch blackness where his face would be. I had never been so afraid in my life. He vanished when I blinked, but this lasted for a good 5 seconds. Redditor 115, I'm a bit late on this, but twice in my life I have encountered experiences with myself as a younger person. Both times I was with people who did not see the person I saw. Once in middle school, I passed myself walking home. He was a little boy who looked exactly like me exactly. He had my same favorite shirt on, and was wearing a blue towel as a cape just as I did. The same hair color, mine is dark brown now, but I was blonde as a child. He was running full force, and when he saw me he stopped, just as I did. We didn't say anything, it just happened. My friend was walking behind me, about 100 feet, and didn't see any of this. Later in university I was in a dining hall and saw myself as a high school student myself, only about 5 years younger. Same jeans, exact same plaid shirt that I wore until it had holes. Same hairstyle, everything. Even the same color bag, worn on the same shoulder. He looked completely lost. Our eyes met, only for a second, then he walked out of the dining hall. I yelled to him, and my friends sitting with me thought I was crazy for yelling at someone who wasn't there. Redditor 116. This is a really fucked up story I never told anyone, so with the passive anonymity, I will tell my tale. I was driving back to college from spring break with 3 other friends. We all were from the same hometown, and our university was roughly 4 hours away. As a precursor, none of us took drugs of any sort, and we were all on various sports teams with full rides for academics. We were the kids whose parents let them drive the Escalade or Range Rover back to college, and everything always went our way. Your typical Ivy Leaguer. Not always proud of this, but it's just to validate that we weren't your typical alien abductees, aka crazy people. About 3 hours into the drive, we start noticing familiar signs that we saw hours ago. Confused, we just kept driving and ignored it. After about 10 minutes we knew something was wrong, since we were seeing all the same signs and landmarks we did 3 hours prior. We never got off the freeway, drove south the whole time, and nobody fell asleep. We drove 3 hours south, then out of nowhere we were right back near the start. We figured since we left our hometown at noon we would get to school by 4. We didn't get to school until 7, and never hit any traffic. It was like we went into a time warp or something, and it scared us so much that nobody said a word the rest of the trip. When we got to school, none of us said anything to each other or talked to each other for over a month, other than the agreement never to speak about it. It was one of the most fucked up experiences of my life, and we all vowed to never tell anyone cause we didn't want people thinking we were crazy. Fuck, that shit scares me. Redditor 117. This thread is lacking scientists to explain how none of this actually happened. Redditor 118. Me and a mate sitting in a McDonald's. We always ordered out so as not to get a shitty plastic tray for the food, but we'd eaten anyways. So, we finish eating and my mate jolts his left leg and a tray appears at his feet. We have no idea where it came from. We looked about and no one seemed to be missing one laughing. As far as we both know, his leg created a tray. Edit one more I just remembered. Said night to my flatmate, I remember it being around 11 p.m. As I stripped off for bed I remember hearing my flatmate's music playing. I turn off the light and jump into bed. I get comfortable and roll onto my right hand side and my heart stops as I see some short bipedal creature walking straight through the wall right next to my bed. I freak and roll to my left to see another creature walking through the wall to my left. I leap out of bed and hit the lights and the room is empty. The music from my flatmate's room is also gone and I start freaking out. I edge my way down the hallway and knock gently on my flatmate's door. He tells me to come in and he's wondering what the duck I'm up to. He had thought I had gone to bed hours ago and had turned his music off to accommodate that. He's right, hours have passed and it's now after 1 in the morning. I slink back to my room with my heart racing. Weird night for sure, just realized this would totally get buried, and it's a story very few know of. At least it'll stay that way tongue. Redditor 119, not sure if this counts as a glitch or not. It was June of 1995. I was going to go to a club with my sister, her boyfriend and about 4 other people. Just as I was getting ride to pile into the big SUV with everybody else I got a call on a pay phone at the coffee shop we were at. This how it was done in the Stone Ages before cell phones, kids. It was my ex. She really wanted to go and asked if I would stay behind. So, a friend and I obliged. 10 minutes later she gets there and we're off. On our way to the club we get caught in a really bad traffic jam. I think nothing of it, though wonder if everybody else was caught in it too. We get to the club and they aren't there. Everybody shrugs it off thinking they must have turned around. This is where the pit in my stomach begins. We hang out, get some food, and one thing leads to another and I end up back home at 6 a.m. I walk into my parents' house and everybody is very upset. My mom then says something I'll never forget: there was an accident. Katie and Sean are dead. TL, Dr. A phone call from my ex saved me from being killed in an auto wreck along with my sister and her boyfriend.